On my 63rd birthday, my son drove me deep into the countryside and left me in front of a collapsed cabin. He didn't hug me, didn't look back, didn't even hesitate. He simply set my old canvas bag down in the dirt and said, "This is your gift, Mom. You'll live here now." Then he got in his car and drove away. Hello, my dear listeners. Thank you for being here with me today. If you enjoy stories about family, sacrifice, and the strength it takes to rebuild yourself from the ashes, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. And before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Your comments always make this place feel like a shared kitchen table, where none of us are alone. Now, get comfortable. This is my story. My name is Helen Moore, and until very recently, I believed my life had been quiet and ordinary. Not the kind of life that turns into a story. I lived with my son Jason and his wife Veronica in a modern apartment in the city. It used to be mine. My husband, George, and I bought it decades ago when life felt wide and full of hope. The walls once echoed with laughter, and weekend dinners, and birthdays with candles melting faster than we could make wishes. But over time, I became a shadow in that same home. Not a mother. Not a woman with a life. Just something convenient that lived quietly in the corner. Jason and Veronica moved into the master bedroom. I moved into the smallest room, the one that used to be a storage closet. I didn't complain. I told myself it made sense. Young people need space. They have lives, friends, careers. I had memories, and memories don't take up much room. Every morning, I woke up at 6. Before anyone else. I would tiptoe into the kitchen so the floorboards wouldn't creak. I made breakfast quietly, grits for Jason, herbal imported tea for Veronica. She liked the expensive kind, the kind that left a bitter tickle in my throat. I myself drank simple black tea alone in my little room. Not to disturb anyone, not to be seen. My social security checks went straight into our joint account. "Mom, what do you even need money for?" Jason would say casually, as if he were doing me a kindness. "We buy everything together." And I would nod. "Yes, of course." What did I need money for? My clothes came from thrift stores. My shoes had holes in the soles. And the only time I went outside was to the grocery store or to pick up prescription medicine. I had once been someone. A wife. A mother who laughed while hanging laundry in the sun. A woman who once dreamed of traveling with George to the mountains in autumn. But after he died, my life folded inward. One day, I had saved up enough money for cataract surgery. My eyes had grown cloudy, and reading my favorite books became more difficult each week. But when Veronica came home crying about needing a designer handbag, "Mom, you understand, right? Jason works with executives. I have to look the part. It affects his career." Jason looked at me with hopeful eyes. I gave her the money, and I bought stronger reading glasses instead. If I ever commented on dinner being too salty, Veronica would purse her lips. "Oh, Helen, your taste buds are just aging. It's normal. Don't worry about it." If I tried to give Jason advice, something I learned from life, from hardship, from losing and rebuilding, he would pat my hand and interrupt gently. "Times are different now, Mom. We'll figure it out ourselves." They figured it out, and I faded. I became the cook, the housekeeper, the quiet presence in the background, invisible unless needed. There were nights I sat in the old armchair that belonged to George. I kept his photograph on a small shelf beside me. Sometimes, I would whisper to him, "Did we raise him right, George? I did everything I could. I loved him with everything I had. This is just how life is now, isn't it?" But photographs don't answer. Silence is loyal that way. And so, my 63rd birthday arrived. I expected nothing. A flower, a piece of dark chocolate, or maybe just a hug. Instead, Jason said they had a surprise for me. A gift that would change everything. I didn't know he meant it literally. And I had no idea that the moment he stopped the car in front of that broken-down cabin, my life was about to begin again. But not the way he imagined. The morning of my birthday was strangely warm for early spring. A soft golden light poured through the apartment windows. It felt almost gentle, almost like the world was trying to give me something kind before everything shattered. Veronica was uncharacteristically sweet that morning. She hugged me. Her perfume was expensive and sharp like citrus and winter steel. "Happy birthday, Mom," she chirped. "We have a surprise for you today. You're going to love it." My heart, foolish thing that it is, fluttered. I hadn't felt anticipation, real anticipation, in years. Jason was rushing, checking his watch, pacing. It felt rehearsed, and I didn't recognize the feeling settling in my stomach until much later. It was dread. "Get dressed, Mom," he said. "We're going to pick up your gift." I wore my best dress, a simple cotton one, printed with tiny blue violets. I brushed my thinning hair, pinned it neatly, and allowed myself to feel hopeful. Maybe they were taking me to a small cafe I used to love. Maybe we would have cake. Maybe, just maybe, we would sit together without tension. Jason grabbed the keys. Veronica stayed behind, pressing 2 fingers to her temple. "Headache," she murmured delicately. "You two go, tell me everything later." I should have known then. We drove out of the city. At first, I watched the familiar streets I had walked for decades blur past the window. But soon the buildings thinned. Then it disappeared. Concrete turned to farmland. Farmland turned to scrubland. Scrubland turned into nothing. I tried to ask where we were going, but Jason's tone was clipped. "It's a surprise, Mom. Just relax." Relax. The word felt like a command. The car hit a pothole so deep that I grabbed the door handle. Dust rose around us. The sky grew wider, emptier. The road narrowed into something that barely qualified as a road anymore, just dirt, stones, and weeds. Finally, we pulled into what once must have been a town. Now it was just bones. A few houses slumped on their foundations. Roofs collapsed inward. Porches sagged like tired shoulders. No smoke, no laundry, no barking dogs, no children. Nothing lived here. Even the wind felt like it had given up. Jason stopped the car beside the worst of all these structures. A shack. Truly a shack. A wounded thing, begging to fall. The roof dipped, tiles missing like broken teeth. The windows were boarded over. The door was crooked. It was a house that had stopped trying. Jason got out. I stayed seated, suddenly understanding. He opened the trunk, pulled out my old canvas bag, the one I hadn't used since George was alive, and set it on the dirt. It looked small, pathetic, as if it was even shameful to be there. "There you go," he said, brushing his hands together like he had completed a chore. My voice cracked before I even formed words. "Jason, what is this place?" He didn't meet my eyes. "It's your own house, Mom, your own space, fresh air, nature, peace. You're always saying city life is noisy." I never said that. Not once in my life. "And Veronica's pregnant," he added, like that was the conclusion of the argument. "We need our room, our privacy. You'll be fine here. It's best for everyone." Best for everyone. Except for me. He wasn't finished. This wasn't thoughtless. This was planned. He walked toward the car door. "Darren." "No. Jason. Jason." Sometimes the mind replaces truth to protect itself. "Jason." I tried again, voice trembling. "I'm your mother." He paused, just for a breath. Then, "Yeah, I know. Take care of yourself, Mom." Braffed. No hug. No apology. No thank you for the years I carved out of myself to feed him, clothe him, love him. He got into the car. The engine started. Dust swirled. And as the taillights shrank into a single red dot, then disappeared entirely, something inside me broke. But not the way people expect. I did not collapse. I did not sob. I did not chase the car or scream his name into the wind. Instead, something clicked inside my chest. A lock. A hinge. A steel door closing. Cold. Clear. Sharp. For the first time in years, I heard myself. Not the mother. Not the housekeeper. Not the burden. But the woman I was before life bent my spine. Enough. The silence of that empty town pressed around me. But it no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like a beginning. I stood in front of the ruined cabin, my bag at my feet, my heart no longer begging to be loved. And I realized I was not afraid. They had not discarded me. They had released me. They just didn't know it yet. I stood there for a long time after Jason's car disappeared, until the dust settled back to the earth. Silence took shape around me, not empty, not hostile, just honest. The shack looked like something that had already given up on being a house. And yet, I walked toward it. Slowly. Not because I accepted what he had done, but because I needed to see where he thought my life would end. The front steps sagged under my weight. Inside, it smelled of dust, mold, and old rain that had seeped through the roof seasons ago and never fully left. Thin beams of sunlight squeezed through gaps in the boarded windows, illuminating dust motes drifting like lost ghosts. For a moment, I let myself feel exactly what this place was meant to be. A grave, not of the body, but of a life. Jason didn't just want me out of his home. He wanted me out of the way. And then, like a lantern lighting in a dark corridor, another memory rose. My husband George, sitting at our dining table 10 years before he passed. His hands, big and warm, steady on a stack of documents. Eve. He'd said he always called me Eve, even though no one else did. I'm going to transfer my share of the condo entirely to you. I had laughed back then. George, why? We're family. It's all ours anyway. With a seriousness that now haunts me, he replied, Life changes. People change. I don't know what the world will look like when I'm gone, but I need to know you will always have a roof over your head. I didn't argue. I trusted him. I signed the papers. And when he died, the condo was legally recorded under one name, Helen Moore. Mine. Not Jason's. Not ours. Not family property. Mine. Jason never knew. I didn't hide it from him, but he never asked. He assumed. And I allowed it. But there was something else too. 5 years ago, a distant cousin I had only met once in childhood passed away and left me a modest apartment in Birmingham. I sold it quickly, quietly, and I placed the money in a separate savings account, one I never mentioned. I didn't hide it out of greed. I hid it out of survival instinct. Even back then, something told me I needed an escape hatch no one else could touch. And now, standing in this rotting cabin, I understood. That instinct had saved my life. I knelt beside my canvas bag. Jason had packed it himself. He hadn't even included a coat. But deep inside, wrapped in a handkerchief, was my old phone, the cheap, flip-style one he bought for me years ago. Grandma phone, Veronica used to joke. Looks like something from a museum. That is now any 2 day. Rebelted is now its times of that ones. It didn't have apps. It barely had a camera. But it had a charged battery. And more importantly, it had numbers saved. Numbers they never thought mattered. I opened it. No signal. Of course not. They had left me in a dead zone on purpose. But this land had hills. So I walked. Through the weeds. Past the broken fence. Through the quiet that was no longer silence but concentration. Up a small slope, where a lone cedar tree leaned, gnarled and weathered, but still alive. There blinked 2 faint bars of signal appeared. Enough. I opened my contacts. My finger hovered only a second before pressing call. Mr. Peterson, bank branch manager, old friend of George's. The phone rang. Once. Twice. Then, hello? This is Peterson speaking. Hello, Mr. Peterson. This is Helen Moore. A pause. Recognition. Concern. Why, Helen, it's been some time. Are you all right? That subscribed it. I looked out over the dry, abandoned town. The empty houses. The long road Jason had taken. Yes, I said calmly. I need your help. And just like that, my voice sharpened. Please immediately revoke all access, power of attorney, and financial permissions connected to Jason Moore on every account under my name. Freeze any transactions he initiated in the last 48 hours. Redirect my Social Security payments to the private savings account ending in 317, and place full identity and authorization lock on all accounts. Starting now. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He knew my husband. He recognized the tone of a woman who has crossed the line where fear ends. It will be done, Helen, within 1 hour. Thank you, I said softly. And one more thing. Seal the account views. He must not even see the balances. Understood. I ended the call. One breath. Then I opened my contacts again. Nina Patel, Esquire, property and estate attorney. She answered on the second ring. Mrs. Moore, it's been years. What can I do for you? I did not tremble. Nina, I need you to confirm public records of my ownership of the condo at 4th Avenue and begin preparing documents preventing any claims from my son or his wife. Also, I need to initiate legal review of any mortgages or liens signed in the last year under my name. Start immediately. I will provide statements and ID soon. Her tone changed from friendly to professional steel. Mrs. Moore, of course, I'm on it. You can count on me. I know, I said, and this time, I felt it. I hung up. The wind gusted through the cedar branches. The air smelled like earth and salt and something old waking up. I walked back down the hill not as the woman I was that morning, soft and compliant, but as someone else. Someone my husband once believed I could be. Someone my son never imagined I still was. I stepped onto the porch of the shack and looked at it again. It no longer looked like my grave. It looked like my headquarters, the place from which I would take my life back, not quietly, not slowly, and not kindly. When I returned from the hill, the sun was already dipping low, turning the dead fields into a sea of rust-colored grass. The old shack stood exactly where it had been broken, silent, defeated. But I was no longer the same woman who had walked up that hill. I stepped inside. The air was thick, stale, unmoving. Dust lay on everything in a velvet gray blanket. A chipped stove squatted in one corner like a tired animal. The table was warped. An iron-framed bed sagged as if someone had once slept in it for many years and then simply never got up again. Once, this would have broken me. Once, I would have cried. But grief and shock require softness, and my heart had hardened into something cold and sharp enough to cut through the dark. I set my canvas bag on the table and rolled up my sleeves. I began with the windows. Not to let light in, though that mattered too, but because I needed to see the world beyond these walls. To make it mine, the boards had been nailed in place decades ago. I found a rusted hammer underneath the bed. Every strike echoed through the cabin and across the empty land. A rhythm, slow and deliberate. Thud, pry, release. When the final board fell, sunlight poured in like a blessing I had forgotten how to receive. Dust swirled golden in the beam. I wiped my hands on my dress and let out a long breath, steady, controlled. 1 window down, 3 to go. I worked until my arms ached and the light faded. Then I dragged the broken boards outside and piled them by the porch. Next came the decaying nuke. I remembered passing something behind the house, overgrown with nettles. I pushed through the leaves, and there it was. A well. Ancient. Wood warped and gray. Rope frayed but intact. I gripped the handle and turned. It resisted. So did I. The chain groaned, the pulley squealed, and then, splash. Water. I laughed. Not loudly, not joyfully, just a single short exhale of something that felt like life returning. The bucket came up heavy, the water clear and cold. I cupped my hands and drank. It tasted of earth and stone and time. It tasted real. Inside, I found an old saucepan. I washed it, scrubbed until my fingers cramped, then boiled water over the stove after struggling to light it with old newspaper scraps I found in a drawer. When the flame finally caught, it roared like a creature waking from hibernation. Heat filled the cabin. My cheeks warmed. My bones loosened. The stove didn't just warm the room. It warmed me. I cleaned through the night. I swept until the floor no longer felt gritty beneath my feet. I scrubbed the table until wood grain emerged beneath the grime. I shook out old blankets under the stars. I found straw in a shed behind the house and stuffed it into the mattress until it rose softer, higher, more forgiving. By dawn, the house didn't look new. It didn't look beautiful, but it looked cared for. And that was enough. On the 3rd day, the phone rang. The sound sliced through the cabin, harsh, electric, alive. Jason. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Mom, finally, why haven't you been answering? We've been trying to call you. His voice was high, thin, fraying around the edges. I've been here, I said. Calm. Even. Oh, well, anyway, we have a problem. Veronica's card declined. At the boutique. There must be some mistake. You need to call the bank and fix it. There was shuffling, a hiss, then her voice sharp, dripping sugar that had gone sour. She's doing this on purpose. She's punishing us. Just tell her to fix it. I need that dress, Jason. Go on, tell her. And then she shouted, loud enough for me to hear clearly. She's old. She'll crack soon. She'll call back and apologize. She always does. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anything. I felt clarity. No, I said. Jason sputtered. No, what does that mean? It means figure it out yourselves. I hung up the phone. Not with anger. With finality. I placed the phone on the table. The cabin was quiet again. But this time, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like my own company. That night, I sat in the rickety chair beside the stove, watching the fire. The flames licked the iron, flickering golden orange, casting long shadows on the walls. For the first time in years, I did nothing. I did not rush. I did not worry. I did not calculate how to keep peace, how to make myself small enough not to burden anyone. I simply existed. I thought of George, his gentle eyes, the way he stirred his coffee with a teaspoon held loosely between his fingers, the softness in his voice when he said my name. He had prepared for this, hadn't he? He had known the world could be cruel. He had known love can curdle. He had known that sometimes the people we raise grow into strangers. He had not chosen this life for me, but he had chosen to give me the tools to survive it, and I would, not out of spite, but because I remembered myself now. I was not finished. The morning of the fourth day arrived gray and heavy. Clouds hung low over the fields, pressing down as though the sky itself was waiting for something to break. I had just finished sweeping the porch when the phone rang again. Not Jason this time. Not Veronica. The screen showed Nina Patel. I lifted the phone to my ear. "Mrs. Moore," she began, no small talk, no softening. Her voice was steady, professional, but there was something beneath it, something bracing me. "I've received the property records," she continued. "You are indeed the sole legal owner of your condo. That part is perfectly clean." I closed my eyes in quiet relief. "But," she added, and the ground beneath me shifted. "There is a lien on the property. A very large one. She have noticed the stictions." The wind stopped. Or maybe the world did. "A lien?" I repeated slowly. "What kind of lien?" "A mortgage," she said. "Your condo was used as collateral 8 months ago." 8 months. My knees loosened. I sat on the porch step, listening to the hollow echo of my own breath. 8 months ago," I whispered. 8 months ago I had pneumonia. I was bedridden, barely conscious, drifting in and out of fever-drenched hallucinations. Veronica had been caring for me then. She had brought me soup, medicine, warm towels, and papers. Paper after paper after paper. "It's just a tax form, Mom. Just sign here, Helen. It's HOA paperwork. Just your signature. You don't even need to read it." My hand had been shaking. My eyes could barely focus. I remember her guiding the pen to the line. I remember her sighing when my signature came out weak and crooked. And then I remembered something else. She had smiled. Not kindly. Coldly. Nina's voice was still speaking, calm and precise. "The mortgage was notarized, which complicates things. But I have already requested a copy of the signed documents. We will examine your medical records from that time, if you were incapacitated." Her words blurred for a moment as my memory replayed itself in flawless clarity. The bed. The fever. The pen in my hand. Veronica's perfectly manicured finger tapping the signature line. My throat tightened not from tears, but from something colder. "Mrs. Moore?" Nina prompted. "I'm here," I said, though my voice didn't sound like it belonged to me. "We believe you were taken advantage of," Nina said gently. "This is textbook financial coercion, and if proven, the mortgage will be declared invalid. The bank will be forced to reverse it, and there may be grounds for criminal charges." Criminal charges. Against my son. Against his wife. The thought did not hurt me. It clarified me. "What is the amount?" I asked. Nina told me it was not small. Not a debt to be paid back slowly. Not something to recover from with budgeting and caution. It was a devouring amount. And everything amounts. They had signed away my home, the last piece of my life, to fund whatever fantasy they were building. New kitchen counters. Designer handbags. A lifestyle polished enough to hide whatever rot lay inside. They had not just removed me from their lives. They had erased me from my own. "Begin proceedings," I said. There was no tremor in my voice. No quiver. No uncertainty. "I'll contact the bank," Nina said. "We'll file a fraud investigation and freeze the mortgage account. The bank will have to respond." We ended the call. I sat there on the porch, listening to the distant stirring of the wind returning through the grass. The silence was not empty now. It was charged. My son and his wife had not simply abandoned me in that shack. They had prepared a grave for my identity, my history, my marriage, my very existence. But they had forgotten something critical. I was not gone. I stood. My hands did not shake. I breathed in. The air was cool, sharp, crisp. It tasted like iron. I walked around the cabin, inspecting it with new eyes, not as a victim assessing her prison, but as a soldier evaluating her fortress. The roof needed patching. The walls needed sealing. The stove would need more wood before nightfall. But I would manage. I will survive here. Not because this place was enough for me, but because I was enough for myself. When I returned to the porch, the phone sat on the step where I had left it. Still, silent. But I knew it would ring again. Not now, but soon. Because news of frozen assets spreads fast. News of canceled access spreads faster. And when Jason discovered what I had done, what I had already taken back, he would call. He would panic. He would break. And I would answer. Not to comfort him, not to soothe him, but to tell him with the quietness of a woman who has nothing left to lose. You dug the grave. But I climbed out. I closed the cabin door. The fire in the stove had burned down to embers. I fed it new wood. And flames rose again. The phone rang just before sunset. I had been sitting on the porch, shelling the last of the small potatoes I had dug up behind the cabin. The air was calm, one of those evenings where the world holds its breath. But the ringtone shattered the quiet like glass. Jason. I didn't rush. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. His voice came out like a roar barely held together. Mom, what is going on? Why are all the accounts frozen? Veronica's card got declined at the store. The bank says you blocked access. Tell me you didn't actually do this. There it was. Panic. Not a concern for me. No regret. Not love. Panic about money. About the life they had built on my back. I said nothing. Silence is powerful when someone expects tears. You need to call the bank. He pushed, his breath frantic. They won't talk to me. They say I'm not authorized anymore. We can't access anything, Mom. We can't even buy groceries. What were you thinking? There was shuffling, a struggle for the phone. Then Veronica's voice burned through the speaker, sharp and acid-sweet. Oh, please, stop pretending to be a victim, Helen. She said my name like it tasted rotten. You're being dramatic because you didn't like the house. You're punishing us. Do you understand I am pregnant? The doctor said I'm not supposed to experience stress. And now look at what you've done. I could hear it, the cracking in her voice. Not from sadness, from losing control. She continued, we bought you that house. We gave you your own space. We could have put you in a nursing home, you know, but we didn't. And this is how you repay us? Jason tried to take the phone back. Mom, just fix the accounts, okay? Call the bank. No. The word was soft, but it landed like stone. Silence. Wind moved through the tall grass. Somewhere, a bird called once and fell silent again. Jason's voice returned, but smaller now, frayed. No? What do you mean, no? I mean, I said gently, figure it out yourselves. Veronica made a sound like something inside her snapped. You selfish old. But Jason cut her off not to protect me, but because his panic had gone feral. Mom, please. We're having a baby. We need stability. We need that condo. It's our future. There it was. The truth spoken aloud. Our condo. Our future. Life is funded by mine. I stood up slowly. The phone pressed loosely to my ear. Jason, I said, and I didn't bother softening my voice. You took out a mortgage on my home while I was sick. You forged my signature while I was fighting to breathe. You drove me to a decaying shack in the middle of nowhere and left me there like a burden. I heard his breath stop. You didn't give me a house, I continued. You abandoned me. To die. Or to be forgotten. No, Mom. It wasn't like that, Veronica said. She said it was just temporary. A lie unraveling in real time. Don't say another word, I said quietly. Silence. The kind that ends illusions. From now on, I continued, every conversation goes through my lawyer. Do not come here unannounced again. Do not call me to fix the life you built with my money. I could hear Veronica whispering harshly in the background. She's bluffing. She always caves. Just keep pushing. But Jason finally understood. The voice that returned was not angry. It was frightening. Mom, what are you going to do? I looked out at the land, the sky, purple and falling to dusk. The cabin behind me, warmer than their home ever was. The well? The stove. The first green shoots of peonies pushing through wild grass. Live, I said. Then I hung up. Not slammed. Not dramatic. It just ended. Final. The quiet that followed felt whole. Not loneliness. Freedom. I sat back down on the porch and finished peeling my potatoes. Steam rose from the pot when I cooked them. I ate slowly. Every bite tasted like something I hadn't had in years. Myself. If you were in my place, if your own child did this to you, would you have forgiven them or walked away like I did? Leave your answer in the comments below. 1. I would forgive them. 2. I would walk away like Mrs. Helen. I truly want to know your honest thoughts. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel for more deep and healing family drama stories. Hit like so YouTube can recommend this story to others who might need it. Comment where you're watching from. I read every single one. You are not alone here. The morning after the phone call was cold. Not with despair, but with clarity. I stepped outside with my bucket to fetch water from the well. The grass was still wet with dew. The sky is pale and soft like washed linen. When I reached the well and gripped the old wooden handle, a voice spoke behind me. Careful with that. The windlass sticks if you turn it too fast. I turned. A tall, lean man stood a short distance away. Gray beard. Sun-aged skin. Eyes the color of a clear lake blue, steady, unhurried. He wore work clothes and boots caked with dry mud. There was no car nearby, no sound but the breeze. He had walked here. He gave a small nod, polite, not prying. "Walter Brooks," he said. "Most folks around here call me Walt. I live 2 houses down well, the only other place left standing that still keeps a roof." There was no judgment in his voice. No pity. Just presence. I straightened a little. "Helen," I replied. My voice sounded stronger than it had in years. "Helen Moore." He stepped closer, and without comment, took the handle from my hand. He turned it not with force, but with long familiarity. The chain squealed. The bucket dropped, filled, and rose. He lifted it for me, set it down gently. "Old houses don't break from being old," he said, as if speaking to the well. "They break when no one cares for them. Same goes for people." I didn't answer, but the words settled in me like warm embers. He didn't ask why I was here. He didn't ask who had brought me or what I had left behind. He just helped. Over the next few days, Walt would stop by sometimes. Not every hour, not hovering, not intruding. Just enough. One morning, a bundle of firewood appeared on my porch. Another day, a tin of goat's milk. One evening, he brought seeds, carrots, onions, and a few potatoes with healthy eyes for planting. "You work the ground?" he asked. "Not in a long time." "It is great." "Well," he said, squatting to loosen soil with a hoe he'd carried over his shoulder. "It remembers how to be good if someone reminds you of it." So did I. We worked in companionable silence. The kind of silence where no one needs to fill it. The kind of silence where existence itself is enough. While we pulled weeds and cleared patches of earth for planting, he told small stories not about himself, but about the land. Who built which barn? Where the river used to run before it dried? How winter wind comes from the north and carries stories with it. He never once asked mine. He simply waited for the day I wanted to speak. And eventually I did. Not everything. Not all at once. But one afternoon, while we sat on the porch drinking tea made from dried mint he'd brought, "My son left me here," I said. Walt nodded once. Not shocked. Not pitying. Just acknowledging. "Some folks don't know how to love," he said. "Some think love is a thing you take. Never learned it's a thing you give." His words were not comforting. They were truthful. And truth can be the first step toward healing. That night, I sat in my restored armchair, the one I'd carried from the city myself, strapped to the back of an old borrowed truck. The cabin was dim but warm. The stove hummed softly. And for the first time in years, I realized I was not lonely. I had myself again. And myself was enough. Sometimes in life, help comes from where we least expect it. A stranger, a neighbor, a quiet presence who asks for nothing in return. Have you ever met someone like that? Someone who helped you simply because it was kind to do so? Leave your comment below. Yes, I have. I will never forget them. Not yet, but I hope one day I will. Your words may comfort someone who is watching this feeling alone. If this story touches your heart even a little, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment where you're watching from. Your voice makes this space warm. You are not alone here. We are listening to each other. Late one morning, just as I finished watering the small green shoots stretching from the newly turned soil, I heard it. Engines. Not 1, not 2, 3. They didn't creep down the old road. They invaded it. Fast. purposeful, as if leading a rescue mission or a siege. Dust rose behind them in long, dirty ribbons. My hands tightened around the watering can. The cars rolled to a stop right in front of my cabin. Doors opened, one after another, like a theatrical performance. Out stepped Jason and Veronica, dressed not in city luxury this time, but in carefully chosen sorrow. Her hair pulled back. Her makeup is light but strategically emotional. His posture slumped, eyes red, as though he had cried all night. Behind them, my relatives. Aunt Lillian from Charlotte, face round and worried. Andre, my late husband's nephew, tall and broad-shouldered. 2 second cousins I barely recognized except from funerals and Christmas cards decades old. They formed a semicircle in the dusty yard, facing me. Aunt Lillian spoke first, her voice quivering with concern. "Helen, sweetheart, we came as soon as we heard. Jason said you've been confused, that you ran away, that you think terrible things that aren't real." Jason stepped forward, nodding earnestly, his voice trembling. "Mom, please, just come home. We want to take care of you. You're not well. You've been imagining things, delusions, paranoia." Delusions, paranoia. They had come to declare me incompetent, to strip my voice, my credibility, my legal standing, my autonomy, because if I was mentally unfit, then all documents accusing them of fraud would mean nothing. Veronica brought a tissue to her lips, eyes shimmering with perfectly measured tears. "We just want her to be safe," she whispered. "We were about to find a clinic, somewhere gentle, healing, but she ran away. It's not her fault she's not in her right mind." The relatives gasped, hands to chests, whispers of heartbreak. I said nothing, because anything I said would be twisted into proof of instability. Jason held out his hand. "Mom, let's go home. You don't belong here." And right then, the gate creaked. Slow, steady. Walt stepped through. He didn't hurry, didn't posture, didn't glare. He just walked until he stood beside me. He didn't look at me. He looked at them, and that was enough. His voice was quiet. "So, you're the ones who left her here." Jason blinked. "What? No, you don't understand." Walt's eyes sharpened, not with anger, but with something far more dangerous. "Truth. I watched your car pull up that day. Saw you drop her bag beside the weeds. Saw you drive away without even checking if the roof was leaking. No hug, no explanation, no supplies." Murmurs rippled across the relatives. Walt continued, his voice deep and even. "I've seen a lot of things in my life. People get old. People get tired. People get forgotten. But I've never seen someone abandoned on their birthday." Veronica took a step forward, voice rising. "You don't know what you're talking about. Helen is sick, she needs." Walt didn't even look at her. "If she's sick," he said, "she sure has a funny way of showing it. She's cleaned this entire place herself, dug her own well water, chopped her own firewood, planted her own garden." He gestured to the soil, the turned earth, the seedlings rising with stubborn life. "That isn't confusion. That isn't madness. That is a woman rebuilding." Silence. Heavy. Shifting. Aunt Lillian turned to Jason, voice trembling now for a very different reason. "Is it true? What he said? About leaving her? About that house in the middle of nowhere?" Jason opened his mouth. But Veronica spoke first. Her control cracked, voice sharp as broken glass. "What else were we supposed to do? She was in the way. Our life was already hard enough." Gasps. "Real ones this time?" "Not for me. For them." Andre stepped forward, tall, stern, steady like his Uncle George once had been. "You threw your mother out like trash," he said, voice low and disgusted. "You tried to take her home. Her security. Her life." Jason's face crumpled. He was not the victim here. He was the perpetrator who finally saw the audience turn. Veronica grabbed his arm, whispering harshly, "Just leave. Now. They're useless to us if they're against us." But this time, Jason didn't follow her lead. He simply stared at me, as if seeing me for the first time. Not as the mother who cooked his meals, not as the wallet he could drain, but as a woman who stood, alone, and strong. I didn't speak a single word. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't shout. It stands. When they finally turned and drove away, dust rising behind them once more, the road felt different. Not like an exit, like a boundary closing. I stood beside Walt in the quiet that followed. He finally looked at me and asked, simply, "You all right?" And I was surprised to find the answer was, yes, I think I am. And description. If your family tried to rewrite the story and make you look like the problem, would you defend yourself publicly or walk away quietly? Please answer with a number in the comments. 1. I would stand up and protect the truth. 2. I would walk away and let life answer for me. If you're still here, listening to this part, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episode. Hit like so the algorithm knows you want more. Comment where you're watching from so we can connect. You're not listening to this story alone. Here, we listen to each other. After the dust from the cars settled and the last distant engine noise disappeared, something inside me settled too. The war was no longer hidden. Everything was out in the open. They had revealed themselves, and I had stood my ground. But surviving is only the beginning. Now, I needed to live. The first real change began with the house. It had stopped feeling like a shackle, stopped feeling like a place I had been abandoned to. Now, it felt like land I had claimed. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was mine, and I would restore it. Not to prove anything to Jason or Veronica, not to show the world I was strong, but because I deserved a home. For the first time in my life, I was building something for me. I hired a small crew from the nearest town, just 2 men, brothers named Mitch and Ray. They didn't talk much at first, just looked around the cabin, whistled at the sagging beams and said, "Well, she's tired, but she ain't dead. Neither are you." I smiled. They set to work. I worked with them. I hauled old boards, swept out mouse nests, brushed off years of dust, carried buckets of water to mix plaster, held beams steady as Mitch hammered them into place. At first they tried to stop me. "Ma'am, this is heavy work." But I only said, "I've carried more weight than this." They didn't argue again. While we repaired the roof, Walt brought over extra shingles. When we sealed the windows, he showed me how to keep cold winds out in winter. When we repaired the stove, he explained how fire breathes differently depending on the wood you choose. There was no pity in his help, only respect. Sometimes, we didn't speak at all. We simply existed together like 2 trees growing side by side, roots not tangled but aware of one another. Inside the cabin, the changes came slowly but clearly. The walls grew smooth and pale under coats of whitewash. The windows glowed softly under sunlight. The floor stopped creaking. The stove warmed the rooms at night, crackling like a living heart. I placed George's armchair in the corner beside the stove. I spread a blanket across it, one I had embroidered myself. Next to it, I built a shelf for books. Not many, just enough. Stories I had once loved, stories I had forgotten I loved. Now they were here again, breathing in the quiet. The garden grew too. Small at first, just potatoes, carrots, and an early line of onions. But then, in a patch near the porch, something began to bloom. Peonies. The same deep red ones I had seen the first day. I hadn't planted them. They had been here, waiting for someone to care. Their buds swelled into heavy blossoms, thick and fragrant, like velvet petals opening to the sun. When I touched them, something inside me softened. A wound I didn't know I was still holding finally loosened its grip. Seasons shifted. The air warmed. The garden filled out. Birdsong returned to the yard. The house breathed. And I breathed with it. I no longer woke up waiting for footsteps in the hallway, or the sound of a door closing, or someone saying, "Mom, can you?" There was no one to please, no one to shrink for, no one to disappoint. My days were simple. Wake with the light, heat water on the stove, step barefoot into the grass, work the garden, drink tea with Walt, watch the sun go down, sleep without fear. Simple did not mean small. It meant peace. One evening, as the sky melted into honey and lavender, Walt and I sat on the porch. A soft breeze carried the scent of peonies. The fireflies had begun to rise from the grass, small stars being born. He didn't ask me about the past. He didn't ask about the future. He just said, "You're doing fine, Helen. Better than fine." And I realized I believed him, not because someone else said it, but because I felt it. For the first time in my entire life, I was not surviving someone else's story. I was finally living on my own. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rebuilding. If you could start over in your life, even just one part of it, what would you rebuild first? Share your answer in the comments. My home, my confidence, my health, my peace, my relationships. Choose one or write your honest answer. You never know who might need to read it today. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel. Hit like so YouTube can share this story with more people. Comment where you're watching from. I truly read every word. You are not alone. We're here listening and healing together. I did not become young again. My skin did not smooth. My hair did not lose its silver. My hands did not forget the years they had worked, washed, held, given. But I became new, not reborn, not replaced, not restored to something I once was. No, I became the woman I should have grown into all along. If life had been kinder, if love had been clearer, if I had learned earlier that sacrifice without respect is simply death in slow motion. But even late lessons are still lessons. Even late gardens still bloom. And mine did. The cabin was no longer a ruin. It was warm, alive. It had become an extension of my breath, quiet, steady, deeply rooted. The garden grew tall with vegetables. The peonies bloomed wide and dark and fragrant, like cups of velvet holding light. The porch was solid beneath my feet. The stove burned without smoke. The windows let dawn in and dusk out. I woke every morning without dread. I did not tiptoe. I did not ask permission to exist. I boiled water, stepped outside barefoot, and breathed air that smelled of earth and sun. Sometimes I smiled for no reason. Sometimes I cried not from pain, but from release. Sometimes I simply sat. And that was enough. Walt remained, steady as the seasons. We shared tea, seeds, stories told in half sentences, silence spoken like language. There was no need to name what we were. Two people who didn't try to own or save or fix each other. Two lives side by side, like parallel tree roots, stronger for growing near, not tangled. That was enough. As for Jason and Veronica, I did not see them again. The law handled what needed to be handled. They lost the condo. The investigation continued. Their faces vanished from my life, like a chapter closed. I did not check the news. I did not need updates. The past no longer had a claim on me. I no longer lived in the story where I was waiting for someone to love me correctly. I lived in this one, where love was not something I chased, but something I grew. Sometimes, when night falls soft and the sky turns a deep ink blue, I sit on the porch with a blanket over my knees. The fireflies rise from the grass in little gold flickers, like stars being born close to the ground. The world is quiet then, not empty, full, a fullness that does not need noise to prove it exists. A fullness that comes from knowing, I survived, I rebuilt it, I am still here. I touch the old wooden arm of George's chair and smile. He would not have wanted this ending for me, but he would have recognized the strength in it. And maybe, if he could see me now, he would say, Helen, you learned to live. And I would answer, yes, finally, I am 65 years old. I live in a cabin in a forgotten corner of the map. My hands are rough. My voice is steady. My life is small by the world's standards. But it is mine. I do not belong to disappointment anymore. I do not belong to guilt. I do not belong to the old story of who I was supposed to be. I belong to myself, and that is freedom. The quiet, lasting kind. The kind that does not shout or demand or bargain. The kind that simply is. Before this story ends, I want to speak to you, the listener, the witness, the heart hearing this. If you have ever been used, overlooked, dismissed, taken for granted, if you have ever loved someone who only knew how to take, if you have ever been left behind after giving everything, you are not weak. You are not foolish. You are human, and it is never too late to choose yourself. Not at 30, not at 50, not at 70. Never. Life continues wherever you begin again. Even a field left untended for years will bloom when someone finally cares for it. So will you. If this story touched you, leave one sentence in the comments. I am reclaiming my life. Just that. Write it for yourself. Write it to mark the moment. Write it so someone else will see it and feel less alone. If you're still here, listening with your heart open, subscribe to the channel for more healing stories. Like the video, it helps others who need this message find it. Comment where you're watching from. I read every one. You matter here. Your presence is felt. Your voice belongs. Thank you for listening. With love.